Hello and welcome to the National Curriculum. I am your temporary host, Nick Stoll. Let's get straight into it because I didn't bother coming up with an intro. Let's get straight into what was one of the games of the season. Wanderers v City. We didn't have many A-League games this past week. We had two. We're going to talk about both of them. We're going to talk about the Matildas squad. We're going to talk about other things going on in Australian football. But of the two games, one was an absolute cracker. Wanderers 3, Melbourne City 3. Teo, give me your thoughts.
What the league needed. I think that really our only lament coming out of this game was that there wasn't a bigger crowd and a greater roar to accompany this. I think it was kind of foreshadowing that in the pre-game, the montage had, maybe not, I think I saw it on social media, some of the great matches between, the second teams of the two major cities in previous games. And we got another one today. The only thing that was missing was a winner in the last minute and a Simpsons pun. I think that the thing is that it's all because City started slow and Wanderers got this foothold in the game. I think on any other day, City may well have blown Wanderers away. So it's all credit to Wanderers. And I think that at 2-0, a lot of people were saying this is the most predictable result of the weekend because it's a new manager bounce. It's a team playing with a sense of freedom and a chance to prove a point with their gaffer stuck in a hotel, not positive, but being isolated for precautionary reasons. And then a credit to City for coming back. And obviously our remaining panelists from the game, Ante and Joey, are going to be coming fresh out of the press conferences where they can give us a bit more context into why the game ended up shaking out the way it did. But I think the quality of the goals, the quality of the entertainment is exactly what we needed. And I look forward to Ante telling us how the game was terrible at a later point.
Well, Josh, this is what I want to ask you. Labano Halidi is going to be doing the press conference, I believe, or maybe it's Gary Van Egmond. I'm not sure who, but how much credit do you think they're going to take in that post-match press conference for this improved performance? Because the Wanderers, look, there are signs of life, all right? I feel like we're looking far into the Australian football galaxy, and right in the outer rim of this Wanderers team, there are signs of life. There is signs that something could be there. And it is, look, I wish all the best to Carl Robinson if he does have COVID, although he has tested negative, but he wasn't feeling well. But it is very funny. You cannot deny it is very funny that their best performance of the season happened to be when he wasn't there. Josh, your thoughts?
The outer rim of the galaxy. Have you been watching Boba Fett, Nick Stoll?
No, you know what? I was watching that climate change movie that's actually not about climate change. About
okay.
Don't look up. That's what I was thinking about. So.
Well, a very kind of in-your-face and obvious movie and a very in-your-face and obvious observation from this game is Robinson not on the touchline. Suddenly, Wanderers good. I mean, it's low-hanging fruit, but it's right there. Like, this was great. I don't know who picked the 11 in this match, but I thought Ogawa starting as the lone striker in a sort of fluid 4-3-3 setup was not what I was expecting whatsoever. And it worked a treat. Maybe, and this is a little off-brand for me, given my long-term love affair with Terry Antonis, but him not being in the midfield maybe gave them a little bit more balance in terms of the attributes of those players. And, Petratos wasn't demanding the ball at every available opportunity and sort of spamming crosses and long shots. He was a little bit more peripheral to the Wanderers' build-up play, which I think benefited them. Ugarkovic was just unbelievable in this match. He's fantastic as a sole six and with two players making forward runs near him. Jack Rodwell, I thought, was actually pretty good. It made for a very open game with neither side playing with a double pivot, which is the usual A-League formula, the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-2-2 of more of the Arnie coaching tree, which is so conservative and leaves so little to build up from the back with. And I just thought this was stunning entertainment. It was end-to-end. It was completely open. Both teams trying to play through each other's press. It was just a great viewing. And I think this actually, when he joins us, might be one of the few games that Ante isn't willing to piddle all over and tell us we're all idiots for enjoying.
Well, can I take issue with the term low-hanging fruit? Can I use the term Occam's razor? Is it simply not just the most obvious solution is the answer? The same way that Wanderers look way better without Bernie Abini in the team? At some point, isn't it just calling a spade and saying that the easy decisions are right there in front of you? Pick the best available players, and if the coach can't get a tune out of them, change the coach. Are Wanderers fans already starting to bemoan the fact that Robinson will be back for the next game? Surely no one is getting full. I mean, they only picked up 1 point for starters, so it's not like they've launched up the table by winning the game, nor have they proven a point by, because they did drop a 2-goal buffer. So it's not like everything was perfect about the game, but signs of life have everyone so excited that it already feels as though it's a marked improvement, even though all it is an away draw, and more importantly, not another demoralising defeat. And I was actually thinking, would it be worse for Wanderers today to get beaten 6-0 or 6-1, but have a lot of possession into the attacking third and a lot of chances that get saved or missed? Or would it be worse to lose 1-0 but be totally toothless and not create anything at all?
Well, you can answer that question at home if you are watching, because if you're watching on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and we'd love to get your comments. We've already had one comment come in from the Eastern Bloc. I can't even pronounce your name, and I have no idea what vum.ngo means. It's a very random comment to receive, but if you have a more constructive comment, please let us know what you think of the Wanderers. But thank you for that person for writing in, which I presume is some Russian bot.
Sorry, do I need to update my virus software now, or what's the go?
Look, presumably we're all infected by some kind of virus at the moment, whether it's COVID or electronic one. But look, I would say at a certain point, is Robinson is his position now a little bit more solid than it was a week ago because of this performance, which I think was a good performance, although there's still issues, even though he wasn't there? Because obviously, you got to presume he was the one who did put the starting 11, has been, he's the one overseeing it. But it is interesting that, like you say, maybe even the players are like, you know what? Maybe you just stay at the hotel from now on. Maybe you're even more of like a sporting director. I don't know. It was interesting just in terms of the different players played. Talked about no Bernie Abini. Tomer Hemed also starting on the bench. Do you guys see that, Josh, start with you. Do you guys see that as what they'll kind of do? Is this kind of the lineup that they've looked at and go, yep, probably this is our starting 11 and this is what we're going to go? Obviously, Williams is injured, hamstring injury, looks pretty bad. Obviously, he'll be out, so there'll have to be changes there. But otherwise, I think this is probably their starting 11 going forward.
I think it should be. Antonio's trying to weasel his way in somewhere, I imagine, but it worked pretty well. I don't see any reason why you'd go away from that.
Bacchus?
Maybe. It's a question of balance, though. Does Bacchus give you a bit of grunt and running that maybe Antonius wouldn't give you? Is Antonius maybe better served as an impact player off the bench, given where he's at physically at the moment in his career? But, I mean, talking about Robinson not watching the games, sort of turn him into Brad Pitt's Billy Bean in Moneyball. This kind of, I guess, look, Robinson not being there will draw some derision from fans, but to the board, to the guys who cut his paycheck, I think his position is more secure now than it was before the 90 minutes we just saw unfold, because it shows that this group of players that he's assembled with some significant tweaks can actually play football and put together a convincing 90-minute performance. I think Hemed's absence from that starting 11 is the most interesting thing about it to me, because he's one of the headline acquisitions. And if he becomes a peripheral player, are they better off getting rid of him while the window's still open?
Well, yes, get mutual. I agree with Ante on this now. I think it's also one of the reasons we've been so harsh on Wanderers is because they had every advantage and a talented team that was underperforming. It's not like this is a team that's in some sort of rebuilding phase or has been gutted by selling players overseas or having them poached from elsewhere. And you talk about Hemed, Josh, and it leads me to a point which, while there's only the three of us, we might have a bit more opportunity to let it breathe. You mentioned Adelaide not signing Nahuel Bernardo after having him on trial, as if his time in the NPL is somehow a black mark against his name. And if he'd simply been signed direct from the club in Argentina that he'd been playing for, he'd have the mystique and the sort of allure that other players getting signed from overseas have. And who knows, it wouldn't be completely unreasonable to say that Nahuel Bernardo would give Wanderers more than Tomer Hemed could. Even though there's significant differences in the pedigree and the resumes of the two players. And on the NRI, anyone who uses that as their indicator of judging a player would be howling me down, saying, how on earth do you dare even suggest that?
Speaking of NRI, what did you guys think of Jack Rodwell? Because, he got into the box, obviously scored a goal. He was making a lot of kind of runs from midfield into the box. I thought it was interesting. We've seen him in a deeper role previously. Do we think that's how they're going to use him forward? And is that a good way to use him? Because if you got Ugarkovic was very good today. And I wonder if it was because he had more people not in his space, basically, that he was constantly the one basically dictating the entire play. Rodwell, I haven't seen Rodwell play for many years. Let's be honest. I haven't seen him since he played basically at Everton. So I basically forget what kind of player he is. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But he does seem quite good at making those runs into the box. I don't particularly trust him to have the ball, under pressure and dictate the game. But in terms of, let's go forward, let's get into the box, let's attack, the Rodwell seems very valuable for that. So what do you think of how they utilized Rodwell?
Yeah, I like this role for him. I think playing as a number 6 is possibly the hardest role to perfect in football. And we see a lot of underwhelming players who don't necessarily have the skill set to dictate games from that position, get minutes in the A-League. And Rodwell being used as a little bit more of a wrecking ball higher up the field and breaking into the box seemed to suit his skill set a little more. When they initially signed him, I expected him to be fielded in a back 3 as a centre half, just so he'd have a bit more time in possession than he would as a defensive midfielder. I just felt that spot was a bit crowded for the Wanderers. And I do agree with your point that Ugarkovic having more kind of lateral space in order to work his magic, because his quality is that he's always moving off the ball. And when you play another player next to him that constricts the spaces that he can move into and show for the ball, it doesn't maximize his skill set. So I think that position is ideal for Ugarkovic, and Rodwell complemented that. I don't think he was the reason behind this improved Wanderers performance, but I think that suits him, having the build-up play come from deeper and him being that presence on the edge of the box.
Josh, what happens in Australian football? If you say Ugarkovic 3 times, this next guest appears. Ante Jukic, ladies and gentlemen, live and exclusive from Amy Park. Ante, you usually, let's be honest, you're massive downer. But today I see a smile on your face. I see joy in your heart. Tell me, Ante, what is your feeling? What is your emotion from the ground?
This was a very good game of football.
Hey!
We got him! Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Mission accomplished. We finally had a good game in the A-League. No, but I think all things considered, it was a very good performance from Western Sydney. 2 things.
Who should get credit for it? Labino Halidi or Gary Van Egmond?
I think it was more a matter of personnel and the constraints that they had to work within. The first, let's say, element of all that was Bacchus returning. I think there's a pretty sizable trade-off with Bacchus in relation to Antonis, which in turn is in relation to the whole of midfield and how it's composed. Bacchus is a much more conventional player than Antonis in midfield. He's a much more combative midfielder, but I think Western Sydney still need that. In isolation, is Bacchus, this awesome player? No, but I think, let's say, next to Rodwell and Ugarkovic, they seem much more, let's say, stable, and much less, not necessarily stable, but much less volatile. And with Ogawa up front as the 9, Western Sydney looked very different and for the better. It was a very open game, but not in a negative way. I'll say that.
So just in terms of the positioning, because we were just talking about this just before you joined us, interesting we're talking about Rodwell. Rodwell, we thought at the start of the season he might be playing in the back 3. He'd played centre-back previously. He'd played defensive midfielder. He played in a deeper midfield role when he initially came into the Wanderers. Now they're starting him higher up the field as a kind of 8. Yeah, as a 10, basically just getting runs into the box. I mean, I don't know what the stats were, but he was in the box every time they broke forward. How do you think, is that his best position? Is that the best way to utilize him in relation to when you have Ugarkovic and Bacchus on the pitch?
It's all kind of dependent as well as with who plays up front. And that's why I think Ogawa playing up front was so transformative. You look at that in both Western Sydney's opening goals in those opening stages. Like, a lot of it happens with Ogawa showing for the ball, wanting to drift off, and he's still got that threat in behind as well, which you're able to see multiple times over the course of the game, not just in the first half. I think it's kind of all dependent on the composition around him, and that's because they're all interdependent factors.
I've got a question for all of you, so feel free, anyone, to jump in. Is Marco Tilio the best Melbourne City player? Have I just gone nuts? I love watching Marco Tilio play. This dude, I would eat his cereal if it was widely available. A-League marketing team, get on it. But he's fantastic, and I don't understand why he doesn't start, okay? Yes, you have Lecky, Naboo, and they keep wanting to persist with that. Maybe because of the NRI, maybe because of, the amount they're paying them, basically. But to me, Tilio should start in that front three.
Tilio, fantastic. I don't know what he has to do to regular start to play.
I don't know if it's just me, but Josh, you sound like you're underwater. So all I'm gonna assume is that you just totally agreed with my sentiments. Teo, I'm hoping that you can speak more clearly to this. Tilio, how good is he, and should he be starting?
No, I agree. Look, I agree with you. Other than the fact it's Melbourne City with the high NRI, the salaries, potentially obligations on game time, and also Kisnorbo's sort of a very structural authoritarian that believes in a hierarchy, and getting to interrupt that hierarchy seems like one of the most difficult things to do under his administration, regardless of how well you play whenever you get an opportunity.
Ante, you saw him in the flesh. Tell me, what, are you buying Tilio stock?
I am buying. I'm a fan of Tilio's. In terms of ceiling, he's probably got the highest ceiling out of anyone at City at the moment. But in terms of impact, consistency, just the ability for everyone, not just impact and consistency, but the ability to make teammates better, I would say it's Berenguer. But Tilio is, let's say, not a very distant, like in comparison to the rest, he's second.
Is scarcity, but the thing is scarcity one of his great strengths? And the fact that we're only seeing small amounts of him, is that actually playing into the mystique and adding to it? Or do we think this can be extrapolated out to 90 minutes per game?
What was very interesting about today, not to make it about confirmation bias, but what was very interesting about that game was how Tilio affected the game or didn't affect the game, depending on game state and game phase. So you look at that third City goal, for example. Tilio had a lot of space to shoot because City were able to break out into transition. And irrespective of why they broke into transition, which was very dubious and maybe should have gone back to VAR, sorry. When the game closed up, it was very interesting to watch Tilio try to figure that out, because I don't necessarily think he's a midfielder. Just because he's technical and has a decent first touch doesn't necessarily mean he has the capacity to feel the game out in the middle of the pitch. I'm probably aligned with you guys in thinking that he maybe should start as one of the players in the front three, with Berenguer starting as well. And that was very interesting.
Is this thing on, by the way? Sorry.
This thing is on, Josh.
Okay, good.
Clear.
I don't think anybody thinks that Tilio is a number 10. I think he's just playing there because the other two are pushing him out of the spot that he should be starting in, because they're the big name signings.
And that was kind of the interesting thing about Tilio again being the change being between Tilio and Berenguer once again this season. It's a very weird dynamic, and I agree with you, Teo, that hierarchy is a very significant thing at Melbourne City within the dressing room, and I'm not sure if that's leading to optimal composition.
So we've managed to nearly go 20 minutes without mentioning it, but the handball incident, the VAR, it's always what everyone wants to talk about. It bores me to death, all the VAR chats. We don't want to talk about should VAR exist or whatever. It's here, it stays. But should that have been a penalty? Roston Griffiths handball. For me, clarissimo. Absolute penalty.
Yes.
Anyone want to say otherwise?
But Sorry, let me just like with VAR, we can't talk about it any longer with respect to whether it exists or not, because the Pandora's box has already been opened.
Yeah.
Like we can't close it again. What's important is just the human implementation of that. Hey,
For the podcast listeners, Ante has just been photobombed.
Well, yeah, Ante is also sitting in what is normally the betting guy seat at AV Park as well.
So
Good
back to more focus. I might just mute Ante while those around him set up properly. Look, fantastic game. Where do we see this going for both teams? Teo, do we see the Wanderers improving from here? Are there worries for Melbourne City?
Well, let me pull up the fixture list, because I guess how many days they have to wait until their next game is actually pretty important with regards to that. So sorting the fixture by date. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because it is so fluid with who's playing when. But I see Wanderers next playing against Melbourne Victory on Sunday. Has anyone heard anything to the contrary?
Well, no, but who knows these days? You
No,
don't make any
and then-
plans. If someone tries to plan something a week ahead now, it's just like, why even bother? Let's see
then-
in 5 days who's positive.
Yeah, and then City's next game is away in Adelaide, which, of course, we've already seen once this year, but Ben Halloran played in that and was central to Adelaide getting the result that they did. So, but Adelaide, very different team now in terms of the direction of their season and also who they're playing and putting on the field compared to the first time around when, to be fair, City had the game cooked and then threw it away late. So where do they go from here? I think that maybe we'll assess that when we talk about the Victory game with regards to Wanderers. But City, they continue to underwhelm a bit, but I suspect that, having been to Hindmarsh once already this season and done everything they could except win the game, I think that they'll back themselves to keep scoring goals, and that is Adelaide's big problem. I'm not sure they can keep up with them.
Josh, you wanted to make a point on that unbelievably clear penalty on Roston Griffiths.
Yes. Can I say it was a penalty while also not casting any aspersions on my golden boy in slim pickings among A-League referees, but my golden boy among the referees, the current crop, is Alex King. And I don't think he could have been expected to pick that out at full speed because the arm was close to the body and it happened very, very quickly. On VAR, when you see it in slow motion, you see the movement that Griffiths makes, the very subtle movement of the arm outwards, and it looks clear. And the shot is goal bound as well. So that really hammers things home. But for a referee in live play, I think the decision to say play on was totally reasonable. And I know that's a bit of a fence sit there, but I also think part of the reason this game was so good is because the advantage was continually and very consistently applied. So props to Alex King.
Can I just say how good it is to actually have had 2 games in a row be played? Because the amount of cancellations that's been going on, to the point where I had this idea, I love a bit of a crazy idea to totally fix the league, is that we get every single A-League player in a WhatsApp group. This is what me and my mates do when we want to organize football games. You just basically pick a venue. You go, all right, cool. We're going to go play at Parramatta Stadium or something like that. First 22 players to say, yep, I'm good, in. Great, you're in. And then we get 2 captains. They can pick the teams one by one, A, B, B, A, whatever the system be. I think that would be great entertainment. All right. You can't come if you need to ISO. So that gets rid of all those players. First 22 are in. Whoever wants to have a break. You could get some amazing teams. Who's with me? The WhatsAppification of Australian professional football.
A-League Blacktop.
Have I? I've been unmuted. Futsal tournament. A-League men's futsal tournament. We need to say who are the real ballers in this league.
Someone said that Andrew Naboo video of him ripping it up in Victorian futsal. I never seen a guy kind of bulldoze his way to so many goals. Impressive.
I've never seen a full PMP player in futsal. Like, it was the strangest thing I've ever seen.
It was amazing. All right, are we done talking? Ante, you want to reveal anything from the press conference that Kisnorbo or Haliti said?
From Haliti specifically, he was very avoidant. Because he's, the assistant coach, so he doesn't want to, put his foot in it.
I would have been claiming 100% credit. I would say, get rid of this Welsh dude, ship him back to Cardiff. I'm your number one man. I want twice the amount of money. Let's go.
I missed the I missed the Kuznovo presser because I didn't really think there was going to be much. That was very.
He said nothing.
He
said nothing.
Is that Nick Dabano?
So-
Nick Dabano
Oh.
from
If there was anything, he said that he doesn't like the fact that the games are too chaotic. That's the one thing that I caught. He doesn't like how the
too
games
fun.
are just
Too much fun.
going into complete chaos. That's it.
His team
He's
thrives
more of a
off
downer
chaos.
than
though.
Ante.
He wants
Yeah.
it to be tighter.
His team thrives off chaos, even though they're one of the, in terms of volume of possession, like they're, one of the highest in the league. And so how about you just fix the relationship between attack and defense, and then it maybe wouldn't be so volatile. But then, look, I know I've kind of left it unsaid, but it's bloody awesome to see, just really distinct how a DM with good positional sense can nullify pressing schemes. And that was what Ugarkovic provided today against, Melbourne City. Because, Melbourne City will press like maniacs, but then there are a lot of phases both in the first and second half where he's simply asking for the ball is stopping them from really pressing because they're going to get through regardless. But yeah, we'll see what happens going forward.
Well, that's the central irony of Melbourne City is they don't understand what makes them good. And Kuznovo is actively trying to do the things that they're not good at, which is the irony of this overarching CFG philosophy.
Yeah.
But I think on the subject of Haliti, I think having him on the sideline was a reassuring presence just because the players could look over to him and see that luxurious mane of hair and just think, this guy's got it together. He gives us a lot of confidence. I think, that guy should be in like a Get Mosh ad or something. It's like,
By the way,
unbelievable.
Haliti, is he like the first A-League player at the Wanderers who, quote unquote, like Solskjaer, knows the club and knows what it represents, and even despite his inexperience, can be installed in a time of crisis because he can rejuvenate the glory years of the Wanderers?
I'm sorry, but I still see Haliti as a Newcastle man, although I guess they're one and the same thing, aren't they? So
There's a subsidiary of Western Sydney. They're, the part ownership model.
All right, before we move on, and I know we spent a lot of time talking about this game, we should welcome to the show Joey Lynch, who is also appearing from Amy Park, hopefully on the other side in a darkened room so we can hear him. He's got Eric Mombart's glasses on, which is good to see. But Joey, can you tell us anything that happened in the press conference?
No. They were incredibly disappointing press conferences. Neither coach gave anything really of interest. I guess maybe Wanderers, we were told that we shouldn't have been surprised that the Wanderers started like a house on fire because they are a big club. So we shouldn't have been surprised by that. It was shared that Carl Robinson... not shared at the press conferences, but by a friendly media hand afterwards, that Carl Robinson returned a negative rapid antigen test today, but because of other cases at the club, out of an abundance of caution, he was ordered to isolate anyway. And then in terms of PK said that maybe the COVID fatigue and the disrupted past couple of weeks that they have had played into both their slow start and how they faded out of the contest as the game went on, which led to me at the end of the press conference asking him if that was the case, why he only made one substitution, at which point he basically said he had a whole bunch of young players on the bench and that he felt Leckie, Naboot and McLaren were producing results. So he didn't need to add anybody on, as I hear Ante cackling away. But yeah, then asked him about why he didn't bring on the young striker that was part of the grand final last year. And he just said that Kolar kind of fobbed me off and then ended up settling on that Kolakowski got COVID a little bit later than the others, so maybe wasn't ready to perform, which he played 40 minutes on Wednesday. Maybe that cooked him, or maybe that's just an excuse. I don't know. Ante, I'll kill you.
All right, not sure what is going on in the press box in Melbourne, but let's move on.
I am in the commentary box at Melbourne, actually. The disproportionately gigantic commentary box in Melbourne, which hasn't been used because the Sydney Mafia has taken over all commentary duties in the A-League this season.
Are we going to now call it the Michael Lynch commentary box?
It is the Michael Lynch Memorial Box, given that he sets up in this room exclusively on his own to work away from the rest of us.
Away from the rabble.
Yeah, I would do exactly the same.
And can I just say, those aren't self-effacing jokes. There's actually a rabble that he's trying to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's move on. Victory 1, Adelaide 1. 2 amazing goals, but not the most amazing game from two sides that are probably struggling. Joey, Ante, I believe you were there. Joey, we haven't heard too much from you yet, so give us your thoughts on the game.
It was 84 minutes of terrible, terrible, terrible football, seemingly saved in the eyes of the masses by about 10 minutes of chaos and lunacy at the end of the game. Neither side played particularly well, and in the end, 2 chaotic goals. I mean, Victory's goal, again, it's a long ball forward to Leighton Brooks, second ball to D'Agostino, they score.
You're getting a bit of hold on. You're getting a bit of Ante's downer vibes like onto you. First of all, it's a very nice goal from D'Agostino. It's a top corner stunner. It's a beautiful strike, and I actually thought Adelaide's goal was very good as well. Good counter attack, good ball over the top, good finish.
Yeah, they were both really good goals, but I mean, one would question if there were any neutrals left at that point, given that they would have had to have been subjected to 84 minutes of sheer mundanity since then. I mean, my initial introduction for the story I was writing was about how if one wasn't watching that game out of some sort of fan or professional obligation, why were you? It was that bad heading into the final 10 minutes. So,
Ante, bring some positivity to this conversation, please.
I remember my first joke. You know what? I'm obviously, as you could expect, I'm aligned with Joseph on that one. That was the most nondescript game of the season. Papered over by 2 absolute rippers in the last 5 minutes.
Well, listen, we've watched plenty of...
And it wasn't... it wasn't... The thing about last night's game, not just last night's game in isolation, but just how similar it was to the first game between the two at Hindmarsh. Both in terms of how they set up, the cause and effect, and how both teams were threatening over the course of the game. And the thing about that that game at Hindmarsh was just simply that the opening goal came earlier, and so Victory sat deeper as a consequence of that. Adelaide were able to equalise, and it was kind of chaotic for let's say 20 to 30 minutes as opposed to 5 minutes or 10 minutes, taking injury time into account. One thing I will say, however much it's going to be lamentable that he'll have to carry a significant creative burden, Bernardo was very good last night.
Exciting.
You know what? There are going to be peaks and troughs with him, but he's got something. He's got something. You're buying stock.
You're buying stock in.
I'm buying stock in Bernardo. Obviously, it's hard to, let's say, determine his ceiling at this stage, but he's a good player.
Do you think Ben Halloran presented? Do you think Ben Halloran presented Bernardo with the ceremonial albatross to wear around his neck?
I said last night.
Adelaide's creativity.
Yeah, last night it was like the Stone of Triumph. Bernardo had to put on last night.
You talk about Josh. You talk about creativity. The rumors swirling today. If you keep your ear to the ground, a la you are a journalist or former journalist in Adelaide, you might have heard that a Spanish superstar, former Perth Glory player Diego Castro, is being linked with Adelaide United, who might have to be referred to as Adelante Unidos if they sign Diego Castro. So that would be Isaias, one day, Javi Lopez and Diego Castro, all I think plus 35, all Spanish. Do we think Diego Castro does he like? Look, I loved Diego Castro for many years at Perth, but he was already kind of falling off towards the end of his time there. So, do you think he will solve any problems for them? Do you think he will massively improve that team, Josh?
I think Sean Evans must be rubbing his hands with glee at the amount of players that he can red card for shouting "Vamos" in the last 2 minutes.
Joey, tell us what happened with that. What was it? Was a "Vamos" or "fuck off"? Because they're pretty different.
Well, the line was, and maybe if you'll give me a second, I'll look up what Ross Aloisi's exact quote was. But yes, there seems to have been some sort of what is claimed by the Adelaide camp is there was some sort of miscommunication between Isaias and referee Sean Evans in the sense that Vamos was mistaken for. This is an adults-only podcast, was mistaken for a fuck off. The exact quote was from stand-in coach Ross Aloisi. I spoke to Isaias and he said he spoke in Spanish and said "vamos." He asked the referee why he gave him a yellow card, and he said he can't scream in his face like that. Then after, I was told, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I was told the referee thought he said "fuck off." And Isaias is 100% certain that he never, ever said that. I'll speak to the club and see if we can appeal that second yellow card, which wouldn't save Isaias, given that his first yellow card of the game gave him 5 on the season and suspended him anyway.
But the thing is, isn't it just the demonstrative nature, regardless of whatever language was used, and pointing out potential xenophobia just inflames the situation needlessly? And I have some sympathy for Sean Evans because of his car getting vandalized in the NPL about 5 or 6 years ago. This is someone who, to still be refereeing, is a credit to his character because it would have chased a saner person out of the game, quite simply. I think surely there's no grounds for an appeal because you could shout, "How do you like that?" or "I really like you, ref," in a ref's face. And
do you like apples, Sean?
Yeah, isn't it your body language that gets you the second booking rather than the exact language?
Was it Kirk Cousins? You like that? You like that?
Exactly.
So
I think that was a wrestling reference, Stoll, and I think you need to come down hard.
NFL reference.
It was an NFL reference. It was a sporting reference. It was
whatever.
It was relevant.
All right, we've gone to VAR, and I will allow it. Look, let's talk just quickly. Calava. I mean, look, he was obviously involved with the whole VAR thing. I'm going to get into that. But we talked about a few weeks ago him being a cult hero who might not be very good, following in a long line of, cult hero goalkeepers who probably aren't that good. What do we think? Are we leaning toward... is he going to start to lose his cult hero status as he kind of continues to make errors?
No, he will maintain his cult hero status no matter what, because he just continuously brings the vibes, and every time something happens, he turns around to the fans and gives it one of these and gets them all involved. He will remain a cult hero, but I will also say that, and now I am going to use a wrestling reference. He is
I think I can mute you. I can mute you.
He is.
You know what?
You were muted there. No wrestling.
I think there's a distinction that has to be made. He will be a cult figure, but not necessarily a cult hero as time goes on. When you think about it, like it was not long ago he was joining, Bad Blue Boys, on tour, watching Dinamo against Atalanta. It's like this is a professional footballer again.
Just in touch with the fans, man. Like Jason Davidson. Come on.
You know what? I've watched a lot of Ivan Kelava, predominantly in the high NL, obviously. I'm not, it's not like I'm watching a lot of the Greek First Division. But when he was at Inter Zaprešić and when he was at Dinamo, like, he wasn't great. But, you know, it's the A-Liga, so he can get it. Like, you know what, I will say this. Having a foreign keeper is pointless in the A-League. When you have, like, seriously, like, you know, there may have been good foreign keepers over the course of the A-League's history, but it's not like Australia is short on goalkeepers.
But here's the thing. John Grimaud, Ante, not to steal your thunder, made exactly the same point on Twitter and actually got a degree of pushback that due to things being better in the Golden Generate with the numerations day, apparently we're not producing the goalkeepers anymore.
We are. It's just like
it's just
we
also
are.
Like,
we have good keepers.
If you have a limited of foreign spots, you know, the difference between the local keeper and the foreign keeper, I don't think you're making a huge, that's the reason that you turned around your season. So I agree. I think
because there's not a titanic tussle for the number 1 jersey for the Socceroos as there was a sort of fluke confluence of Schwarzer, Bosnich, Kalac, all those guys. Doesn't mean we're not producing goalkeepers across the board that are A-League quality.
I mean, there would be a titanic struggle for the number 1 jersey for the Socceroos had one of John Grimaud's clients, Mitch Langerak, not retired from international football at the moment, given that Matt Ryan is struggling for game time in Spain and struggling with fitness, and Langerak is coming off 2 of the best seasons in J-League history for a goalkeeper.
Joey, you wanted to talk about Bernardo. What do you want to say about the youngster?
Yes, before we move on to the elephant in the room, we were talking about how he had a good game, but I also think it's worth pointing out that Bernardo was going up against Jay Barnett at wing back for Victory, who was not the backup. He was the backup wing back for Melbourne Victory, and yet despite this, the Reds failed to get the ball to Bernardo enough to actually make Barnett work to the extent that you would have expected him to as a left back who is the 4th choice. This coming just a few weeks on when they faced Nikolai Topor-Stanley at left back for Western United, and for some godforsaken reason failed to just run it. Nikolai Topor-Stanley, 36-year-old centre-back Nikolai Topor-Stanley playing at left-back for 90 straight minutes. I could not understand why that wasn't happening.
Did they not trust Bernardo in the same way that they seem to obviously trust Goodwin, who's on the left side? Because it seemed like a lot of the balls were going out to Goodwin.
It's not that. Bernardo is still the outlet for them in the same way that Halloran was for a lot of times. They were, because... Look, primarily the Isaias Juande pairing in midfield is death. Mork, trying to do his best to play the Riley McGree role and effectively being Adelaide's most advanced player in a lot of attacking phases, just with his spamming of runs in behind, that makes it worse. So as a consequence, you need to have someone like Bernardo or Halloran receiving the ball in the positions they do. But in receiving the ball in the positions they do, they're doing a lot of that either right at the touchline and with their back to goal, having to receive the ball on their heels, waiting for players to join them in order for Bernardo or Halloran to incorporate them. There was one instance in the second half last night. Tratt had the ball. Isaias is hiding in the cover shadow. Juande's on the other side of the pitch. His only pass is to Javi Lopez. Javi Lopez eventually gets the ball, but by the time it gets to Bernardo is receiving the ball right at the edge of the touchline, back to goal. So he's basically got nowhere to go. Still receives the ball, gets past Barnett, but still has Roderick Miranda, having to mop up essentially. The ball goes out, but this is the thing about the consequential effects of what midfielders do. If you have an attacker that has such a creative burden in terms of, as a reference point, more often than not, they're going to be isolated. And so they don't really have numerical or positional superiority in this respect. And so this is predominantly why I harbor such zealotry and idealism towards midfielders, because more than most, in the A-League, Isaias, it just suffocates the ball. And the fact that they even brought him back, and in isolation, Dorigo's, that Dorigo had to come off the pitch after coming on was lamentable in itself. But with that in context, it just made it even more. It just made it even worse.
It also doesn't help. It doesn't help when the overlaps from fullback is not as forthcoming as they are on the opposite flank. Javi Lopez is a particularly conservative fullback, in my opinion. And Ryan Kiddo, for all his limits as a footballer, is a superb athlete and a former winger. So he has that mentality of always wanting to get forward. And when Goodwin was able to beat players, it was usually because Kiddo was drawing somebody's at least attention or a step in the wrong direction, or Guerrier had his head on a swivel, and Goodwin was able to make the most of that little hesitation and actually go past him. So Bernardo does not have that luxury on the opposite side.
No.
All right, let's move on to one of the shitter aspects of football that happened this week. Josh Cavallo called out homophobic abuse that he received. My understanding is that he received it both in the stands and also on social media later. Widely condemned by, I think, Victory, Adelaide United, the PFA, FFA, everyone that condemns these things after it happened. I'll just read out what Cavallo said. I'm not going to pretend that I didn't see or hear the homophobic abuse at the game last night. There are no words to tell you how disappointed I was. As a society, we still face these problems in 2022. This shouldn't be acceptable, and we need to do more to hold these people accountable. Hate never will win. I will never apologize for living my truth, and most recently, who I am outside of football. To all young people who've received homophobic abuse, hold your heads up high and keep chasing your dreams. Know that there is no place in the game for this. Football is a game for everyone, no matter who you are, what color your skin is, or where you come from. To the social media networks, Instagram and Twitter, I don't want any child or adult to have to receive the hateful and hurtful messages that I've received. I knew, truly being who I am, that I was going to come across this. It's a sad reality that your platforms are not doing enough to stop these messages. Thank you all to the positive messages, love and support. Seeing that far outweighs the negative to the individuals that reach out after making a stand at the game. I commend you. Thank you to those fans. You had me emotional. Love will always win. Joey.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. It's so incredibly disappointing, and I think the only thing as disappointing and heartbreaking as it happening is the fact that I doubt anybody in this chat, I doubt anybody watching this, I doubt anybody listening to the podcast is surprised that Cavallo eventually was on the receiving end of homophobic abuse after coming out. It's just, like I said this on Twitter and I'll say it again. If you are watching this, if you are listening to this podcast and you were one of the people hurling abuse at Josh Cavallo at the game or sending him abusive messages on social media after the game, fuck off. We don't want you listening to us or watching us. Go away. You are contributing absolutely nothing. And I've written an article about this. I don't even know where it's going to run yet or if I'll just have to self-publish it, but it's all well and good for all of these clubs, for the APL to come out with statements condemning the homophobia, but now has to be followed with action. There has to be an investigation and there has to be proper real world consequences for this. It's all well and good to bask in the glow and the limelight of being the club, the league that employs the only out gay male footballer in the top flight in the world at the moment. But that comes with a responsibility to protect him, and it comes with a responsibility to protect every young person that is watching this, seeing this, and is now, maybe they were inspired by Cavallo coming out and they are now seeing this and maybe they are now having second thoughts. Just as important as backing Cavallo when he came out is backing Cavallo now that he is the subject of abuse. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. This comes with this, and it's not simply a matter of if you want to be, this goes for everything. This goes for racism, it goes for sexism, it goes for homophobia as well. It is not enough to simply say something. It is not enough to have to put out statements and condemn things. It is not enough to have a pride round, to have a multicultural round, to have a women in football round. You have to be anti-homophobic. You have to be anti-racist. You have to be anti-sexist. You actually have to work to get rid of these things, not talk about how bad they are. You actually have to take steps to get rid of them and make them not welcome in your leagues beyond just words, which I think has to be the legacy from this.
For what it's worth, the APL says they are working with both clubs to investigate the incident and it's promised to issue sanctions to any people found to be involved. Melbourne Victory said spectators found to have breached these standards will be banned from future matches. So, the investigations will happen. Let's see what comes of it. Ante and then Josh.
Yeah, just to reiterate a couple of things. The clubs, the league, have to bring the same energy in response to this when it isn't convenient. And it's not convenient in this time in clubs. And, the league itself has to be more active in this respect. I wanted to wait until, this because, we were obviously going to talk about it tonight, but it's something that, Cavallo even made mention to in his statement. It's very lamentable that this kind of situation was going to be inevitable. After he came out, and that, frankly, that sucks. It's not good enough. And that Cavallo has handled himself in such a manner is at the very least commendable and commands respect. He shouldn't be treated with such disrespect. That's the long and short of it.
Josh, did you want to add anything?
I guess the reason why we all said how brave Josh Cavallo was when he came out is that there was always a chance that he would be subject to this kind of thing. So I think it's great that he's making his stand so public because it shines light on the issue, that it doesn't just go away. It's not just all, smiles and fairy tales at the end of the day. There are some still really regressive attitudes in society and they have to be combated. And talking about making statements, where's the Melbourne Victory actives on this? Like, I would really like to see Original Style Melbourne come out and make a statement condemning those people who held abuse. And make it clear that those people are not welcome in the terrace.
Can I also just say it was very noticeable that of all the statements that were released today by the PFA, the APL, Adelaide United, Melbourne Victory's was the only one that wasn't actually attributed to somebody. It was just a general broad statement. Every other organisation had a name to it, except Melbourne Victory's. I mean, it's good that they've at least come out with a statement, because last year when bottles were thrown at Tegan Micah in what was then known as the W League, now the A-League Women's Melbourne Derby, we got radio silence. We got nothing.
But even this is bare minimum.
Yeah, so that they've released a statement is a start, but yeah, Victory, especially Victory fans, basically Victory as a whole, has to follow this up with action.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree. Look, one thing I'll say is this is as ugly as it is. There are signs of progress here. There are signs of progress. The fact that Cavallo felt that he could come out and publicly, he didn't just say, "Oh, I'm going to ignore any abuse I get. I'm just going to block it out." He's willing to come out and say, "Look, this is happening." And it was very quickly condemned widely by the football community. Yes, actions speak louder than words. Let's hopefully those actions will come in time. Teo, do you want to say something about this?
Yeah, look, sorry, a plane is going over, so
That's all right.
a bit of a distraction. But do you think, you don't need to answer this, I'm asking it rhetorically. Does anyone think we're going to learn the names of the fans banned? Does anyone think we're going to learn how long they're banned for? Does anyone think we're going to hear about the disciplinary process of what they went to, whether they were stripped of memberships through their terms of membership, whether they were banned from stadiums due to the terms of entry? Will they be brought in front of an FFA tribunal, similar to the Melbourne Victory fans that attacked South Melbourne fans in an NPL game, and many of them received 5-year bans? And I think this doesn't just apply to this case. I think it applies to a lot of misconduct cases. And you mentioned the Tegan Micah one there, Joey, of all different varieties. The initial sugar hit for the media and what is commercial and what is newsworthy is that it happened, but the follow-up and the follow-through is not commercial. And I think it is a legal issue because let's not forget one of the seminal moments in turning fans away from this league is when the Daily Telegraph decided to publish the names and the various offences of people who'd received stadium bans. And at the time of receiving those bans, they were probably under the impression that even though they may have done the wrong thing, they may have thrown a drink at a referee, they may have abused a referee over the fence, they may have fought in the crowd, they may have bought in flares, they may have done X, Y, Z, they may have done any list of things that are against either people or the venues that they enter into. They probably had an expectation that they were going to remain anonymous while receiving their punishment. And I just wonder, is this the tipping point where there is no longer an assumption of anonymity? But if that is the case, are we going to go about it in a responsible way that doesn't start a witch hunt, regardless of the severity of the offence that these people may have allegedly committed? And I asked that rhetorically. You don't have to answer.
I won't answer it. Very good rhetorical question. All right, let's talk the Matildas Asian Cup squad that was announced this week. Teo and Joey, you were going on about this in the group chat that we have. Teo, your thoughts first on the Asian Cup squad as I bring it to the screen.
I think having heard some Matilda leaks in advance, I was actually quite excited about this squad. And then I found out that 4 of the players were actually just going to the camp in the UAE and weren't part of the final squad. And they're the ones with the asterisks next to their name here. So Courtney Vine, Matilda McNamara, Carly Rossbacken, and Winona Heatley. I was actually quite excited at the prospect of McNamara being included. For those of you that aren't familiar, we're going to walk the group stage. Our goal difference will be somewhere between +8 and +15 at the end of those 3 games. And then the tournament starts. It's almost 2 tournaments in one, which makes it an interesting balancing act between getting game time into the likes of Claire Wheeler or potentially Matilda McNamara if she makes the final 23, rotating our keepers, rotating our forwards. But then it gets serious. We could then get South Korea or Japan, depending on who wins their group, in the quarters. And then we could get one of China, South Korea, or Japan in the final. Highly likely, with the way the groups have been drawn, that we'll be playing either India or Thailand in the semis. So really a bit of a red carpet to go a long way in this tournament. Before I get into some of the specifics on who missed out, Joey, what were your initial thoughts?
Well, I thought, much like you, Teo, some of the most interesting members of the squad were, unfortunately, the ones that have the asterisks next to their names in that squad list. And to be honest, I think the conversation surrounding this squad in the lead into the games in India will revolve around which 50% of those 4 actually make the final squad. As Coach Rado Vidicic pointed out in his press conference today following his side's win over the Wellington Phoenix, it's basically going to come down to probably Holly McNamara versus Courtney Vine for one, and Winona Heatley versus Carly Rosebarken for the other slot, 1 defender and 1 attacker. So that should be interesting. I thought, talking about, we'll get to the players that missed out in a second, but it was interesting in the sense that she didn't actually miss out, but Katrina Gorry was initially selected as part of this squad. But unfortunately for this audio-visual podcast, given that we are probably the leaders of her fan club, she decided to opt out, given that she does have a 4.5-month-old baby at home and traveling to multiple foreign countries with a small infant in the middle of a pandemic probably isn't the smartest call in the world. So that was very disappointing to see. But yeah, Teo, inevitably in these sort of chats, I guess, really, isn't it? It's a matter of who missed out and by extension, who is perhaps lucky to be there, which is the biggest conversation. I mean, the biggest surprise out of any of the inclusions is obviously Ivy Lewick, given that, up until the squad was announced, she was actually retired from international football. I mean, I guess, Teo, Ivy Lewick, I think it was you, Ante. Ivy League's going to do a job, which is about winning the tournament, which I guess in continental football, that's the goal, isn't it, Ante?
That would be true if the framing of the Asian Cup in the lead up, at least in the public sphere, wasn't about, let's say, this Matildas squad reaching its ceiling at the Women's World Cup in 2023. Continental tournaments, yes, you should be going out to win them, and that's why they're there. That's what we're here for. The whole idea of football is to win, but it's in isolation. The Ivy League selection is fine, but if viewed within the prism of the Matildas actually reaching their ceiling and selecting squads with the whole of a World Cup cycle in mind, then it's maybe not optimal. At the same time, though, and you've obviously touched on it, but that midfield is arse. Like, it is just not good. Obviously, Gori's absence is absolutely rational in that respect. Speaking of Matilda leaks, the reasons as to why Chidiac is not there are very, very interesting. But there's the idea that a final will make it defensible, or like a final or a semi-final appearance will make it defensible. There are still going to be the same underlying issues that existed at the World Cup and existed at the Olympics with this squad, and we haven't learned a thing.
Well, very quickly, I will say one thing. I don't think a semi-final is acceptable. This is a Matilda squad that has made the final in 5 out of 6 Asian Cups. If anything less than a final isn't acceptable. But getting to your point, Ante, about how this tournament has been framed, it was very interesting in Tony Gustafsson's press conference after the squad was announced. And I'm not sure, maybe he wasn't getting his point across properly because English is his second language. I'm not sure. But he did give an answer that seemingly indicated that initially this tournament was going to be surrounding getting minutes into players and preparing with 2023 in mind before there was a strategic shift, not from the coaching staff, but from Football Australia to making this a tournament that must be won. Tilly's leaks suggesting that there are a few individuals that might have made that call, but that does perhaps speak to the problem that exists when we in the lead into 2023 is that there are competing interests at play. There is preparing for 2023 with the intention of performing as well as possible, but there also is the intention of preparing for 2023 in a manner that maximizes the value of brand Matilda and maximizes the amount of coverage and the amount of sponsorship money that that side is bringing in the lead-in to the games. And I think if there has been that shift in mindset from Football Australia, yes, I know I said quickly in the chat, Nick Stoll, but I'm on a roll now. If there has been a mindset, it is probably entirely because the language surrounding the Matildas during these past months of friendlies, which, let's face it, they haven't played very well in at all, has been around how the time to judge this side is at the Asian Cup and at the World Cup, tournaments that supposedly matter more. It feels as though somebody at Football Australia has seen all of these statements trotted out again and again and again and realised that if the Matildas don't at least make the final of the Asian Cup, having spent the past 6 months talking about how this is the tournament that actually matters, all of a sudden, public opinion has the potential to turn very quickly, which is not what you can afford from a commercial standpoint heading into a home World Cup.
Quickly being the operative word there. Josh.
It was a good point. I make no apologies.
For those of you watching the stream, I just want to draw your attention to Nick Stoll doing his best Mike Wazowski impersonation in the bottom left there with his head covered by an M. I only have one point.
Wilson from Home Improvement.
Um, I only have 1 point, and that's Ivy Lewick being brought out of retirement doesn't get us any closer to a centre-back combination that's going to work going forward to 2023. And I don't think, however much she might help, may or may not help us win this Asian Cup, I don't think it's worth it. Is she going to play at the 2023 World Cup? No. Then why the hell is she on the plane? I like her as a player. I think she's contributed greatly to Australian football, usually playing as a number 6, not a centre half, but it's over. I don't know why she's there.
Well, you've named the first name. I actually like Lewick from the point of view that it sets a precedent to unretire Laura Brock, which is not something I thought I'd be saying, but the precedent's set. So Laura, refresh and come back, because we probably do need her. I think there's a few players in here that the Matildas are going to rely on post-2023, but won't necessarily be near the starting team in 2023. So a lot of players might retire. A lot of players might retire from international football. A lot of players might step away from international football and have a break. And in that vacuum, we're probably going to need Courtney Nevin and Remy Simpson. But I don't think they're players that should be in the starting 11 of the Matildas right now. One of them, Simpson, is killing the A-League Women's. One of them, Nevin, is getting killed in the A-League Women's at the moment. I mean, I watch Courtney Nevin and I see a player who's redlining at the moment. And I know we've picked Holly, sorry, I called her Matilda earlier, Holly McNamara, off a small sample size of 4 games. What kills me about COVID is we were probably one more game of Kirsty Fenton away from picking her on the same sample size, who has blitzed it at left back for Newcastle. Angie Beard should be in this squad ahead of Nevin if Nevin is a fullback. Jessica Nash should be in this squad if Courtney Nevin is a centre back. I'm just calling a spade on this one, because we get to see the A-League Women's, and regardless of how these players do in training camps or how they do in their fitness testing or all the other things, the intangibles that are weighed up by the coaching staff, you get 3 points for winning on the weekend. And Jeff Hopkins does not trust Courtney Nevin at centre-back to get him 3 points. So why does Tony G trust Courtney Nevin at centre-back to get the Matildas 3 points? That's the contradiction that we're all seeing, and it doesn't make sense to any of us. And some people, to be fair, have reached out and tried to explain it to me, but they haven't been able to change my opinion. So credit to those who have reached out. Joey, do you want to jump in on that? Because I've got a couple of other names I want to drop very quickly as others, just to put in the black book when you watch this tournament and have other questions about the team.
Well, I'm going to talk about players that I feel potentially names that have missed and the intrigue surrounding that. Angie Beard is obviously one of them. I mean, Tony Gustafsson, in talking about this squad, talked about the importance of domestic form and the stats behind players. You've mentioned Courtney Nevin's struggles with Melbourne Victory this season. They've looked utterly lost defensively without Kayla Morrison there.
And Angie Beard.
And Angie Beard, who was their inspirational leader at left back as they won a title last season. All Angie Beard has done in her last domestic season was play her way into a team of the season place in the Danish league. So if we're picking players based off their domestic form, hello, Nick. If we are picking players based off their domestic form, why isn't Angie Beard getting picked as a fullback in that situation? I don't know. If we are picking players off domestic form and we are apparently so thin at centre-back that we are bringing Courtney Nevin so that she can play at centre-back, we are bringing Ivy Lewick out of retirement that she can play centre-back, somebody like a Jenna McCormack, who has played week in and week out, who has been playing week in and week out 90 minutes every single week in the Danish league.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are players who...
I mean, there's Emma Checker at Melbourne City. I know Emma Checker is quite a polarising defender in terms of her viability for the Matildas, but her side's on a roll. They kept another clean sheet today. She got on the score sheet. She's a centre-back that knows who is serviceable at international level, if nothing else, and serviceable would have been a massive upgrade on some of the Matilda centre-back play in some of these friendlies they've had.
Can I just quickly say, Joey just said, hello, Nick, randomly during that answer. He was referring to Nick Dabano, who was in the background of Ante's shot. And just, I don't demand that people say hello to me mid-answer after they've said that they will go quickly on it. Josh,
yes,
you wanted to make
yes, Mr. Nick Stoll. Sorry, Nick Stoll.
Josh, you wanted to make a point about Chidiac?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Hello, Nick. I just think it's a really ill-timed COVID positive for Alex Chidiac, who, regardless of Melbourne Victory's blips, has been a bright spark for them. And her long absence from the Matildas is a crime against football.
Well, Chidiac was one of the names I had lined up here, but I think the tournament's come at a poor time for someone like Claire Hunt coming back from back-to-back knee injuries. Wanderers, another clean sheet today. Caden Cooper was a fringy for this squad. Claire Hunt's the one to watch into the future as far as centre-backs are concerned. And Chelsea Blissett coming back from her ACL, playing in that Melbourne City back five. I think for 2023, she wasn't ready for right now, was never going to be. But fitness-based by the end of this season, future Matildas program through winter, I think Chelsea Blissett is the one that's going to peak in time to make a really strong run for 2023. And that's even ahead of Heatley, who's been called into this squad as well. Taylor Ray is the hard luck story. She was going to be picked for this squad, and there may have been a global issue that has prevented her from getting picked for this team, which is heartbreaking, given she's also a two-time ACL recoverer. Let's not forget Chloe Lagazzo had an ACL. Amy Harrison has had COVID playing overseas. Neither of those two are in this squad. Amy Sayer is not getting much game time, I understand, for Stanford. Hopefully she doesn't get pigeonholed as someone who's putting academics before football, but she was right there in the mix. Dylan Holmes, a bit like Alex Chidiac, is probably going to be better off playing in the A-League Women's than going to this tournament, going to the training camp and then not actually playing in any of the games. And then Gorry, obviously, is waiting in the wings. Indy Riley is playing in Denmark, seemingly anonymously at the moment. Ash Sykes is only 28. Just want to hang that out there. And then in your striking stocks behind Simpson, Crummer, Chelsea Dorber, Alira Toby, I don't think any of them get in ahead of Remy Simpson. Remy's scoring too many goals and laying off too many assists and playing too well. But I think the thing is that I've just named a dozen players that are all, I think, justifiable to include. And I think the real issue is not enough jeopardy has been attached to positions of incumbents in this team. And I think you look at someone like Courtney Vine and Remy Simpson, they've been walk-up starts for this tournament because of how they've played. I don't think that's the case. I think some of the A-League women's players have slept-walked through their games and have been a bit lucky to get picked based on reputation. I just want to hang another one out there. Matilda McNamara got absolutely tortured by her namesake, Holly McNamara, when Melbourne City last played against Adelaide United. Now Adelaide play Melbourne City again next weekend. Matilda McNamara looked a lot better against Canberra. Hopefully she goes from strength to strength, because in terms of height, strength, speed, it's all there, but the performances aren't there. But by the same token, I'm not sure performances in the A-League Women's are mattering that much. It's more about, do you have some NRI? So that's the end of my spiel on the Matildas. I think we'll make the final. Do I think we'll beat Japan? Very possibly. We may do what we did at the Olympics and win while being out XG'd by 3.
Friend of the podcast, Pakua from Pong, has written in on Twitter saying, just waiting for Ante Jukic to call cut and ask for a new camera angle, giving real Damien Chazelle vibes. I had to look up who Damien Chazelle was. He is a director. La La Land is the only thing I've seen of his. Pretty good. But you do look like a director, Ante. You do absolutely look like some emotional, wanting to do an indie movie, but stuck on a commercial success, but a critical flop. That's what you look like right now.
Don't have the coke habit.
Ante, we're giving you the Oscar, but we're taking it away moments later.
All right, look, I think we should wrap it up there, because I promised my girlfriend that I'd be finished by now. And that's a good enough reason to finish.
Nick with the humble brag. Thank you, Nick. Yes.
Let's finish with the A-League predictions. So next week we have a full round of games, it looks like, in the A-League. A-League men's, I should say. Let's first predict how many of those do we think will go ahead. All 6? Put your hand up if you... Let's give it... What's the over-under? We'll say 4. Over-under's 4.
Can I just say, I don't have an A-League men's game this weekend. I've lost one the last 2 weeks. And my next one is Newcastle versus Western, which is the weekend after. So I'm going to say all 6. And I'll just fingers crossed that Newcastle versus Western goes ahead, because I miss getting to do both leagues.
Over under for Teo in-jokes and name drops in that Newcastle Western game if it goes ahead.
8. All right. let's start off with the game. I mean, this is an absolute classic. Talk about rivals. Friday night, 7:45. MacArthur, Western United. This is the game that, Boca River, Gala Fenerbahce, this is the one.
Sevilla Betis.
My prediction is that MacArthur will hang their logo high, and they will.
Ooh, in jokes.
In jokes. I'm going for the over.
I don't like in jokes. I'll explain that one. There was a rumor that their logo had been taken down their building.
Can I just say, Stephen Paletti, who is a very good tweeter because he says nice things about me. I'm using no other metric. He said he actually saw the logo with his own two eyes, and regardless of who designed it, it is still hanging at MacArthur headquarters.
Another in joke. Well done. Okay, look, Joey, MacArthur, Western United. Give me a score.
Okay. Well, firstly, shout out to Stephen. I know she's doing some work with the Inner Sanctum. Good luck with to him. Also, you mentioned postponements. I wanted to bring up a tweet from Danny Townsend. Which
a quick tip, mate. That's what I wanted.
A tweet from Danny Townsend, which didn't get much notice, probably because it was a reply. He's tweeted out that he doesn't foresee it's. He said it's unlikely games will need to be postponed beyond January 15. So that
just in time for Aubameyang to arrive, Joey. Based on other replies from Danny Townsend.
Are we calling that?
In the works.
Calling that Freedom Day, January 15th?
Okay. MacArthur 0, Western United 0.
All right. Teo, go.
MacArthur 0, Western United 1.
Josh.
Game postponed, no result.
Ante.
Well, it's an interesting one.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I'm going to take as long as possible to answer this, just to piss you off. All right.
Ante, would you like to?
You know what I'm answering. You know what I'm answering. Under 2.5.
2.5. All right. Well, look. I mean, I'm not going to watch it, so probably it'll be a cracker. 3-3. All right. Speaking of actually good games to watch, the Jets are back, baby. All I care about in
the Jets are back in town.
Is the Jets coming back? I want to watch these Jets so badly. So, Joey, let's start with you. F3 derby, Mariners at home. Mariners Jets. Let's go. I want to bring up a tweet from 1957. Blah, blah, blah. Give me a number.
Mariners 2, Newcastle Jets 1. Newcastle Jets 3.4 xG, while the Mariners 0.3 xG, but still win 2-1.
I like it. Teo.
Jet coin to the moon, Newcastle 3, Central Coast 1.
Boom. Josh.
I'm going to go 2-0 to the Jets.
Ante.
3-1 Jets.
Boom. I'm going to say Manita Jets in the derby. I love it. 5-0. Adelaide United, Melbourne City. Joey, contain yourself, please. Let's go. Adelaide United, Melbourne City.
Melbourne City 3, Adelaide 0.
Oof. That's a tough one. Teo.
City 3-1.
Josh.
Melbourne City 1, Adelaide United 0.
Ooh, Ante.
Over 2.5.
Ooh, I'm going to say Melbourne City 2, Adelaide United 1. All right, Sydney FC, Brisbane Roar, Joey.
Ooh.
Sydney FC 2, Brisbane Roar 1. Brisbane Roar actually play better.
Teo.
Is this? There's no odds being offered for this game, which alerts me to the fact that there might be issues. So I'm going to say postponed.
Are you cheating by looking up the odds?
Take it to the NES level, fellas.
Make sure you sort that chest out, man.
All right, Josh, does this game happen or not?
Josh.
Yes, it does. And who's at home? Is it Sydney? Yeah. Okay. Sydney FC. Sorry, I was just getting hot in here. I can't run the aircon while we're recording a podcast, you know? Sydney FC 4, Brisbane Roar 1.
Boom, 4-1. Smashing.
Yeah.
All right, Ante, go.
Both teams to score.
Over 4.5 corners.
You know what? No. You know what? I'm not sure if it finishes Sydney 2-1 or 1-1.
All I'm going to say Sydney 3, Brisbane 1. Perth Glory, Wellington Phoenix, 10:05 p.m. I want to score, and I want to. Does Daniel Sturridge? What's the bet? Daniel Sturridge gets COVID this weekend or something, and then has to isolate for another. This dude is never going to play. This dude is cursed. All right, Joey, give me a score and how many minutes we see from Daniel Sturridge.
Wellington 1, Perth Glory 1. Terrible game. Daniel Sturridge doesn't play.
Oh, brutal. Teo.
Sorry, I jumped ahead. So Sydney 2, Brisbane 0. This is the one without a market. Perth Wellington. I think this is the one that could have an asterisk. So I'm not going to tell you until I know it's definitely going ahead.
It's very superstitious of you, Teo. I'm going to say Sturridge hat-trick, baby. 3-0 Perth.
If Sturridge scores a hat-trick, we're going live at midnight on Saturday night. Someone text me because I probably won't be watching the game because I'll be waiting for the video. But yeah, look, there's not much going on in Sydney at the moment unless you want to get COVID. So I'm staying in a bit more. Ante, what's the score? Perth, Wellington, how many minutes does Sturridge play?
I thought all of these games were like under the proviso that they go ahead too. But anyway, I'm saying under 2.5. Sturridge does not see any minutes.
Oh, brutal. All right. I'm saying Perth Glory 1, Wellington 0. Daniel Sturridge, 70 minutes. 70 minutes.
70 with a 0 on the end.
Is that a weird number to put out there, like in terms of if he's going to start, he's probably going to play 80 minutes, you'd say, or 60?
He's not going to start.
Why not, Johnny?
Because
Bruno will cause a ruckus in that dressing room, man.
Man, look, Bruno, honestly, man, like, know your place. You know, I
love Bruno, but
I love Bruno.
The bloke has played 7 minutes of football in 3 years. They're not just busting him out for 80 minutes and breaking their shiny new toy.
Well, they busted him out in the first game.
He can't be that
for
fragile.
7 minutes at 7 minutes at the end.
That's busting him out. Daniel Sturridge levels, that's busting him out, mate.
Yeah, busting him out. He made, I think, he didn't even sprint. He made sort of like one attempt to sprint in that game, and that was it.
Man, this guy is meant to be a professional player. You're talking about him like he's 58-year-old Maradona or something. Like, come on.
I mean, his ankles are that of a 50-year-old Maradona.
Like he has an
Maradona could still move in those old games.
Even leaping and like just
that first touch of Maradona in a charity game was unbelievable. Anyway,
okay, right. His joints are the equivalent of a 50-year-old Maradonna's kidneys.
Okay, all right.
If Sturridge benches Fornaroli in this game, Bruno's going to throw his cue cards in the air, baby. Like,
Vamos!
All right. Still one of the great moments ever. Western Sydney, Melbourne Victory. Joey, does Carl Robinson come back to the bench?
Carl Robinson makes his triumphant return to the Western Sydney Wanderers bench and watches as his side wash against the Victory defence and lose 1-0.
Teo.
I can see this being a 0-0 draw.
Josh.
Wow. I'm not sure about this one. It's really stumped me. I'm going to say a 1-1 draw.
Wanderers win.
Wanderers win. They've turned it around. Win. They've found the
no. Like
that works for
them.
If
there's anyone who can cause, look, it'll be dependent on competition, but on a primary level, if there's anyone who can cause Melbourne Victory problems defensively, it will be Ilgarkovic. And they leave acres of space in the middle of the pitch with that 4-4-2 and how they defend in a block. If Victory can jag one in transition, obviously they have the capacity to. I think both teams will score, but I think Wanderers will win.
Can I go at a proviso? If Rojas and Economides and Marjota are all out for this game again, I think Wanderers will win.
And my proviso would be if the Wanderers that we saw against Melbourne City rock up, they win. I just don't have any faith that the Wanderers that we saw today will rock up.
And my proviso,
like on the basis, sorry,
We're allowing asterisks
No,
to
yeah.
I said a dangerous precedent.
I'm just winding up Stoll here.
We're hedging. There's nothing wrong with hedging.
Lengthening this into the 90. My proviso
Mr.
is
Nick Stoll.
my proviso is watch the curtain raiser because I'm commentating Wanderers versus Victory Women, which after today's results is now actually a 6-pointer. Catherine Cannuli, someone who's done commentary for free as a volunteer with me in the past. Great to see her getting her first win with Wanderers as their A-League women's coach. So good luck to her.
Can we say she is a friend of the pod just because of her association with
We
you
can
with
say
that?
she is a friend of the pod.
However, there's nothing wrong with putting qualifiers in this respect. Like I said, with respect to the Wanderers, it will be dependent on composition because I think if Agawa plays up front, if Agawa plays up front, it doesn't mean the ball is going to go to Troisi, and it opens up space for Troisi and Petranos, and it opens up space for Varkovic as well. And yeah, you know what? And that was the interesting thing about the Victory game against Adelaide. Isais and one day they just had so much space to go into. Anyway, sorry to hold you, Nick. I think if all things considered, I think Wanderers win.
PMP now stands for predictions and provisos. That's what. Forget pace and power. That's what PMP stands for. All right, guys. I think we can wrap it up there. We got close enough to the 90. We stayed under it.
Could we do A-League women's tips just to get us to the 90?
I don't want to look it up. I don't want to look it up.
Let me go to
all.
sleep, says Stoll.
Oh, man. I don't know. Is there anything else anyone wants to raise before we wrap it up? Is everyone happy with what it is? Do we want to do a media watch segment? Do we want a media watch?
No, thanks. No, not after last week.
So did you get, you know what? I'll put you on the spot. Did you get blowback for that?
No, of course not. But
No one listens. Don't worry.
That doesn't mean I can't stress about it as it's happening. I just want to give a shout out to the residents of Breedalbane, New South Wales. If you saw someone in a white Toyota Corolla driving through your town not once but twice on Saturday afternoon, looking very worried and like he may have taken his car for a swim, that was me. I love your town, population of about 5, but the people of Breedalbane, I hope I will never, ever be back. And I'm not, this is an in-joke, Nick, I am not going to explain it.
No worries. At this stage, no one is listening.
Never let
Nick,
go.
Nick, on behalf of Pakua, do you know how time works? Your girlfriend is asking.
Whoa.
I'm just,
brutal.
it's Pakua. It's on behalf of Pakua. It's just what she's responded to.
Nah, shut
The
up.
devil on my shoulder.
Pakua, please come on the show and help me.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
people
you know what?
the time.
Get her on.
Yeah, I don't think I'm coming next week because there's gonna be issues. All right, well, let's wrap it up. Enjoy your football, enjoy everything. Stay safe. Try not to get COVID unless you have COVID, and then congratulations. I hope it was all good and there's no long COVID for you. But yeah, that's basically it. Go on.
Book in your booster.
Book in your booster. Predictions? What happens to Djokovic tomorrow morning?
You know what?
that's a whole other podcast.
He's done.
Podcast with no one getting cancelled. Rukshan's not retweeting us. Let's just get out. Let's leave now. Quit while we're ahead.
Hey, bro, he's done more in uniting the Balkans in the past week than Tito ever did. However,
Hang on. Did my last comment bounce off your ears? We're out. The pod's over.
however,
Let's go home.
happy AFCON, everyone.
Yeah,
Happy
that's
AFCON.
going to be sick. That's going to be sick. Who do you think's winning? Ivory Coast? Bit Algeria? You feeling Algeria?
Algeria.
Anyway,
But AFCON can spring surprises, man. That's the cool thing about AFCON. It's the most fun tournament in all of international football. Happy AFCON, everyone. Merry Christmas.
yeah, I reckon club football should take a break for a while because obviously
Club football
other
should
teams.
just be ended. We should just have international football. Like, forget club football, man.
Nah, club
Sorry.
football is still got that. Too
International
far.
curriculum.
I'm a Barcelona fan. Just do away with club football, man.
I'm going to do away with this podcast. I'm going to end it there. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for everyone for listening. 1 minute short of 90 minutes. That's when I'm hosting. Keep it tight. All right. Good night.
Goodbye, Nick Stoll.
Good-
Thank you, Mr. Nick Stoll. Thank
See
you.